Yeah, same shit, you keep bringing me down. Same old story every time you come around. You a red nose shorty, but you looking like
I'll never doubt Brandon. That kid has been one of the most impressive racers through his entire amateur career.
Alright, I'm going to take you guys through a push workout. It's Sunday. I rode yesterday, so my back, hamstrings, glutes, etc. are pretty sore, but my front end is pretty fresh, so I'm gonna go ahead and do a push workout. So typically, I really like to start with an incline machine if they have one. If you don't have an incline machine, just use a regular bench. But I do like incline as my first movement, as I feel like my upper chest is a weaker link on my chest. So every meso I've been starting off with an incline movement. And I just really like the Smith machine. It allows me to lock in on my technique. So yeah, let's get right into it.
All right, so thank you guys for clicking on the video. Hopefully you learned something from it. This is just a raw push workout, nothing fancy. Notice here, I'm not using much weight. A lot of my strength is quite low right now, just with how much cardio I'm doing. But yeah, so incline Smith, one of my favorite movements. I just have right now, I started off with a plate on each side, which is just a 45-pound plate. And I'm using reps in reserve here, but notice that I try to keep a really solid tempo, a slight pause at the bottom, and try to explode out of the bottom. Full range of motion, really trying to keep technique the same even when I have to grind the reps. Yeah, the closer that you get to failure, your rep speed slows down a little bit, but it's really important to try and keep the same technique rep after rep. Just prevents injury risk, and also just for tracking reps over time, which I'll talk about later in the video. Just, you don't want to have a rep where you're bouncing out of the bottom. Try to keep them all the same if you can. So here I believe I had to take the weight down, I forget. But yeah, I did 3 total sets. I only filmed 2, but I did 3 sets of incline, and I'm resting around probably 3 to 4 minutes in between these sets. This video doesn't show my rest interval, but I don't do these like back to back to back. So when you lift, you don't need to have short rest times. It's actually better and been proven to have longer rest for better hypertrophy. So here I'm doing flat dumbbell. I really like flat dumbbell for my flat movement. And guys, it doesn't take many exercises for a day to be complete. For example, on chest, I'm only doing 2 movements here because my volume is quite low, but it actually doesn't make sense to do more exercises because there is a lot to say about your muscles firing in the exercise. So for example, if you just jump from machine to machine to machine, you kind of have to warm up on that movement just to get locked in and really push yourself, also with reps in reserve and whatnot. So it's best just to stick to a few movements. You actually don't need to shock your body like a lot of people think. That's totally a myth. So yeah, just keep it simple. Progressive overload is key here. Right now, this is my side lateral movement. I use full range of motion. Not many people do these side laterals like this, but there's actually zero reason not to. A lot of people like to say the traps take over past once you get, up above near the neck, but there's still quite a bit of delt focus even there. So if anything, you're hitting your rear delts as well. So there's just absolutely no reason not to. It's actually very safe. It is not high risk on injury. So these, I keep the weight light, obviously. It's pretty hard to lift heavy dumbbells like this, but I'm doing still, I think, 2 reps in reserve here, and I try to keep tempo the same. I try not to swing down at the bottom and control the weight a little bit on the eccentric part of the movement. But yeah, this is a pretty hard exercise to use big dumbbells for. So an adult pump is pretty intense. I'm sure if you had one, you know what it's like. Here's just a quick physique check. Lighting is kind of weird here. I think around this video I'm about 150 pounds. So yeah, thank you guys.
Alright guys, so I just got done with that push workout, and I briefly just want to talk on it before I go here. So when you ride, if you're a moto guy, a lot of times the fatigue will be in the back side of your body, so your back, your lats, your glutes, hamstrings, even calves. Sometimes I'd say after races your shoulders are pretty fried as well, but like typically after practice days my shoulders aren't that bad, so I'll add those into my push session if I'm hitting the gym. So in the off season this will all change, and I'll be filming in the off season as well to show you what I do when I'm lifting without riding in the schedule, right? So today in the morning I just had a little run, and I have a bike to do here in a little bit. It's going to be an hour. So today's like my recovery day in my 3-day microcycle. So my 3-day microcycle just means that in 3 days, I'll typically have 2 of those a loading day and then a recovery day with that those 2 loading days. So that might be going long one day and hard another day, or it might be both long, or it might be both hard. But I typically balance that out with a recovery in between. And then I don't do training in a 7-week or a 7-day paradigm. I usually typically use a 9-day, even further sometimes. So that just means that I don't have a full day of rest typically, unless I really need to. I listen to my body. I also track HRV as well. But yeah, so just briefly talking about that 3-day microcycle. Today's my recovery day. On those days though, I lift. It's not the best for recovery by any means, but I typically always use reps in reserve, not pushing to failure, making sure that I'm eating enough calories as well. You guys have no clue how much nutrition I actually eat calorie-wise, so I always make sure to try to stay on top of everything for recovery. That along with sleep, I try to always get a minimum of 8 hours. So anyway, this push workout, so I'm progressing it off of the previous few sessions. I have the same gym equipment, so it's easy to track those weights and reps over time. I start off always with my incline, which I probably talked about in the voiceover. But the incline I really like, even if I'm at home. My home gym has an incline Smith machine, or a Smith machine, and I like to use the incline bench for that. And then I went over to the flat dumbbell, which I like utilizing dumbbells on my flat bench just so I can really get a deep full stretch. I'm a huge full range of motion advocate, so I like full range of motion. And it doesn't take many sets for my chest to get a pretty big pump, and I still am having soreness even on pretty low volume. So I moved right into shoulder work, which I pretty much always try to hit side lateral raises 2 to 3 times a week if I'm lifting. The reason for that's just simply physique goals. Like, I really like the way my physique looks when my delts, like, they're really pretty weak right now, so I like to have a little bit better delts, and that just goes well with the front of your frame and your chest and core and whatnot. So and a quick tip with your lateral or your side lateral delt is that you typically don't really need to change exercises all that much. So like if you're doing side lateral dumbbell, for example, you can just do that exercise and do 5 sets of that, you know, or you don't have to like do side lateral raises with dumbbells and then move on to a different exercise and then a different one and a different one. You only need 1 to 2 exercises. So like lately I've just been doing dumbbell because this gym doesn't have access to cables. But the cable exercise where you have the cable down to your side and you pull up also is a really good exercise. It hits the main emphasis of the movement is at a different point. So with gravity, and also just where the hardest part of that movement is with the cable is totally different than a dumbbell, right? Because like when you're doing a dumbbell lateral raise, when you come down to your sides, there's really no tension right here. You can just kind of stand there. To where with a cable, if you stand out and extend, you could be pulling against the cable and it still has quite a bit of tension on the bottom. And with a cable too, like when you come up to the top of your movement, there's a lot of tension there. And you can also control the eccentric part of the movement. So I do like using a cable for side laterals as well. Anyway, yeah, and then I typically would obviously hit, I like to do triceps too in my push, but I'm not hitting arms right now just because I do have a race this next week. So I just I do what I think won't really affect me on the track. Racing's always number one priority. This type of lifting stuff is really just for physique. People don't realize this, and I've said this multiple times in different videos and stuff, that for motocross, I would say you really don't need much of any sort of gym work. Anytime I've ever added gym, usually I'm more fatigued and I feel worse when I'm riding. So that's definitely up for debate with a lot of people. I'm all for it for injury prevention, but if you are limited on time or you think that going into the gym is going to really help you on the track, I'm sorry. It's just riding is a lot more to do with cardio and endurance. And any type of muscle that you add onto your frame just taxes your body anyway. You just require more oxygen with that muscle. So yeah, being lean is your friend. I've rode at a bunch of different body weights. I've rode at a bunch of different body masses too, just carrying more mass on my frame, lean wise. And yeah, I always feel worse when I have more mass. So I just do this stuff to not turn too skinny, and I like the way I look when I'm lifting a little bit. So in the off season, I always lift again and kind of just, I repeat the process. It's not like counterintuitive. I don't regret anything I do in the off season, but I would say for sure the best thing to do would be to stick to a cardio. You take your detraining after the season, and then you kind of just, ideal world would go right back into aerobic work. But yeah, I've done it all. And yeah, I just wanted to share my input on lifting a little bit, and I hope you guys liked the video. I'm doing a Q&A next, so send me your questions, comment, Instagram direct message, and shoot me a message, see if I can answer what you got, and that'll be, stay tuned for that. It'll be the next video. I really appreciate you guys watching all my stuff and supporting. I know it's just a small little channel, but I really love doing this, and it just gives me, makes me happy. So thank you guys.
That kid has been one of the most impressive racers through his entire amateur career.